بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Last time we stopped off at defining al-Hadith al-Musnad, the Musnad Hadith or the supported Hadith. And now we're going to continue with the connected Hadith or the Muttasil Hadith. He says, وما بسمع كل راو يتصل إسناده للمصطفى فالمتصل. Everything in which it is connected by the hearing of one narrator to the other until the Mustafa, as he says, it is the connected hadith. It is the muttasil hadith. So if I were to draw a chain of narration, and here we have the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and here we have a Sahabi, and here we have a Tabi'i, and here we have a Tabi'i. Tabi'i, if he hears from the Tabi'i, and the Tabi'i hears from the Sahabi, and the Sahabi hears from the Prophet ﷺ, then this is called a connected chain. It's called a muttasil chain. If any single person is missing from this chain of narration, so we have a chain in which a Tabi'i narrates from a Sahabi, who narrates from the Prophet ﷺ, then this is not a connected chain. It is not a muttasil chain. Similarly, if the Sahabi is missing, it's not a connected chain. And this is a minimal chain. You could have 30 people. If there's just one person missing, then it is not a connected chain. It is not muttasil. Now, generally speaking, according to most muhaddithin, the connected chain does not have to be marfu'. And we defined what marfu' is last time. The connected chain does not have to end at the Prophet ﷺ. So if someone were to narrate from, so if a tabi'i were to narrate from a tabi'i who was to narrate from a sahabi, and the sahabi is not attributing anything to the Prophet ﷺ, so it is a mawquf hadith, which we'd also defined last time. If this is connected through hearing, then it is also a muttasil hadith. It is a connected hadith. Now here he defines it as isnaduhu lil Mustafa. So he says the isnad must end at the Mustafa, must end at the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is not what most hadithin would use. Most hadithin call something connected because it is connected, regardless of whether or not it ends at a sahabi, or it ends at a prophet, or it ends at a tabi'i. Anything that is connected is called a muttasil hadith. طيب. مسلسل قل ما على وصف أتى مثل أما والله عن بني الفتى كذلك قد حدثني قائما أو بعد أن حدثني تبسم. We have another type of hadith called musalsal, or something that is something that is musalsal in the Arabic language. We call it, it's something that is chained or linked, one after the other. A musalsal hadith is any hadith in which a specific quality is being repeated. I'm just going to check before I go in. Is it me or the audio goes a little? Okay. I hope the audio is fine. I forgot to connect my microphone. I think I caught that early on. I hope it doesn't, I hope it's not bad in the recording. Much better, yeah, okay. If there's anything unclear about what I said before, you want me to repeat it, you can ask, and I can address it at the end. I hope everyone else understood. طيب. بمسلسل حديث.
The musalsal hadith is a hadith in which there is a specific quality that is being repeated. And some of you who may have attended the 40 Nawawi hadith last summer, you would have heard me give you the musalsal bil-awwaliyya, if any of you were in attendance there. So that's an example that I can give. A hadith that is musalsal bil-awwaliyya, that is chained by being first or chained by priority. So for example, what is hadith musalsal bil-awwaliyya? Hadith musalsal bil-awwaliyya is the first hadith you hear from someone. So actually I could be able to open it up somewhere. So while I open it up, I'm going to explain. So the first hadith a specific sheikh ever told me is hadith X. And the first hadith he heard from his sheikh is also that same hadith. And the first hadith he heard from his sheikh is also that same hadith. So when I'm narrating that hadith, there is a specific quality that is being repeated. And that specific quality is the quality of being the first hadith narrated. So let me open it up here. Just 1 second. You guys can see this, right? Yes, okay. So if you go to the very end of the chain, you see here, so you see here Sufyan ibn Uyayna. He says it's the first hadith he heard from him. Who is it? It's his student. Abdurrahman ibn Bishr al-Hakam al-Nisaburi. It's the first hadith he heard from Sufyan ibn Uyayna. And Abu Hamid al-Bazzaz is the first hadith he heard from him. And so on and so forth. Every single sheikh has narrated as the first hadith he heard from his sheikh until it reaches us in the modern day. And the hadith is الراحمون يرحمهم الرحمن ارحموا من في الأرض يرحمكم من في السماء. So there's a specific quality that is being repeated, and that is the quality of being the first hadith that is heard from such a person. Another example of a hadith musalsal is a hadith that is, for example, always narrated on Friday. So my sheikh tells me this narration on Friday, and his sheikh tells him that narration on Friday, and so on and so forth. Now, a hadith musalsal, it doesn't really change the ruling of anything. Just because it is hadith musalsal, it doesn't make it more or less usable to extrapolate a ruling. It doesn't make it more or less authentic. However, it is something that exists. It's something that the fact that this term exists, it helps people label specific ahadith. Specific ahadith usually have names, you know. So it helps people keep track. You know, muhaddithin have to have thousands of ahadith to memorize. So when you have special names for specific ahadith, it helps them memorize these special ones. And so that's why the hadith musalsal was named. The chained or the linked hadith was named. Now we're going to go into a new topic. The amount of people that narrate. We have here the Prophet ﷺ, and we have a Sahabi, and we have a Tabi'i, and we have a Tabi'i, and we have another Tabi'i. So each person is hearing from the person above him. The Prophet narrates to one, not narrates, but the Sahabi narrates from the Prophet ﷺ, and the Tabi'i narrates from the Sahabi, and then two Tabi'i narrate from the same Tabi'i. Of course, here we're talking about the same hadith. We're not talking about narrating in general. We're talking about a specific hadith that is being narrated. عزيز مروي اثنين أو ثلاثة مشهور مروي فوق ما ثلاثة. We have three types of ahadith. The first one is gharib or fard. Gharib is a hadith that is narrated by one person. So because only one Sahabi is narrating from the Prophet ﷺ, this is called a hadith gharib. It means it means the chain of narration is limited to one person. And you'll notice that even though there's two tabi'in here, it doesn't change that. As long as in any level of narration, no matter which generation it is, any level of narration in which there is only one person, that becomes a hadith gharib. So even if I'm going to bring another Sahabi, and that Sahabi also heard the same hadith, if it's only one tabi'i narrating from both of these Sahabis, it's still a gharib hadith. As long as there's any bottleneck in the chain of narration, any place in the chain of narration in which there is only one person narrating the hadith, then that becomes a hadith gharib. The second level is aziz, or a strengthened hadith, which is the one he narrates here. A strengthened hadith in which there is 2 or 3 people in every level. So if I'm going to add a tabi'i, the reason this was a gharib hadith before is because it was limited to one tabi'i. In a specific generation, there was only one narrator. If I'm going to remove that, and now I have a second tabi'i, now I have 2 people in each generation. See, I have at least 2 unique chains of narration. And there's no bottleneck. There's no generation in which there's only one person. And that makes it a hadith aziz, a strengthened hadith. And a aziz hadith is one that is narrated by 2 or 3 people. Now, if it becomes more than that, it becomes mashhur, which in Arabic means famous or popular. A mashhur hadith is one that is narrated by more than 3 people. So if I have 4 Sahabis, and each of them is narrating to a tabi'i, and each one of them is narrating to a tabi'i. I have at least 4 unique people in each generation. I have at least, there's more, but I have at least 4 chains of narration. I have 4 unique chains of narration. This means it is a mashhur hadith, or a popular or famous hadith. Now, why does the amount of narrators matter? Well, the first obvious reason is that if there is a bottleneck with one person, which is a gharib hadith, as we defined before, then it is more likely that the narrator could have made a mistake, even if he is reliable. If you have 4 people all narrating the same thing, then it is extremely less likely that a mistake is being made. So the amount of narrators obviously adds to the authenticity of a hadith. Is it possible for 2 narrators to both make the same mistake? Yes, it's possible. Is it possible for 3 to all make the same mistake? Yes, it's possible. When does it become impossible? We have a concept called mutawatir, or mass transmitted hadith. A mutawatir hadith, according to the muhaddithin and the usuliyin and the ulama in general, a mutawatir hadith is one that is known by necessity. Not necessarily what the meaning is, but the fact that the Prophet ﷺ said this is known by necessity, and anyone who would negate this is a disbeliever, the same way as negating the Quran, because it is narrated by so many people to the extent that it is impossible for any of them to lie. So it is known by fact that the Prophet ﷺ said this. An example of a mutawatir hadith. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من كذب عليه متعمدا فليتبوأ مقعده من النار. Whomsoever amongst you has lied upon me on purpose, then let him reserve his seat in hellfire. Now this hadith is narrated by dozens of Sahabi. I think the number is 70 something. 70 something unique Sahabis are narrating this hadith. Is it logically possible that all of them have agreed to make up this lie? No, it's logically a ridiculous claim, and so it is mutawatir. The fact that the Prophet ﷺ said this hadith is known by necessity, and any person who negates that the Prophet ﷺ said this is a disbeliever. Now, just because a hadith is mutawatir, it doesn't mean that the meaning is known. It doesn't mean that the dalala is known. And unfortunately, a famous YouTube da'i, someone who was popular on the internet, made a huge mistake saying this. He made a huge mistake saying that any mutawatir hadith, then the meaning is known. So an example is the Prophet ﷺ said, إن هذا القرآن أنزل على 7 أحرف. The famous hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said, this Quran has come down in 7 ahruf, 7 modes or 7 letters. Those of you who are familiar with the science of qira'at and the science of ulum al-Quran in general, and have studied this mas'ala, this issue, you will know that there is multiple opinions about what this hadith means. So just because a hadith is mutawatir, such as this hadith of the 7 ahruf, just because a hadith is mutawatir, and the fact that the Prophet ﷺ said it is known by necessity, it doesn't mean that the meaning of the hadith is known by necessity. Similarly, the Quran is mass transmitted. The Quran is mutawatir. Anyone who negates that this verse is from the Quran is a disbeliever, because it is mass transmitted that this is from the Quran. We have hundreds and thousands of Sahabi who narrate the Quran continuously, so anyone who negates it is a disbeliever. But obviously, in the Quran, there are verses upon which the meanings are differed upon, whether it's in aqidah or fiqh or anything else. There are certain verses in the Quran in which the meaning is disagreed upon. So the fact that the Prophet ﷺ said the Quran in this method is known from the religion by necessity, and anyone who would negate it is a disbeliever, similar to a mutawatir hadith. However, just because someone disagrees upon the meaning, it doesn't make him a disbeliever, simply for being mass transmitted. So there is a difference between a verse being clear-cut in meaning and between a verse being clear-cut in attribution and in thubut in Arabic. Say thubut and dalala. Thubut means to prove something has been said. Dalala means to understand it and to extrapolate something from it. So a mutawatir hadith is qat'i thubut. It is clear-cut in terms of attribution. However, it does not have to be clear-cut in terms of meaning. Now, what is the amount of narrators that we must have for a hadith to be mutawatir? We said that a gharib hadith is 1. A aziz hadith is 2 or 3. A mashhur hadith is more than 3. If you look at all of the statements of the muhaddithin, you will find specific ones. You will find specific muhaddithin who give a certain amount of narrators that after which it will become mutawatir. However, the muhaqqiqin, the specialists in hadith, the later ones such as Ibn Hajar and An-Nawawi and Ibn Salah, etc., the ones who have refined the science of hadith, they looked at all these statements and they said that there is no clear answer to what the number is. A mutawatir hadith becomes mutawatir when everyone agrees it's mutawatir. A mutawatir hadith, if there is a question about whether a hadith is mutawatir or not, then that hadith is not mutawatir. If somebody says this hadith is mutawatir, means it's known by necessity, and then another scholar says, no, it's not known by necessity, it could be wrong. The fact that this scholar differed is evidence that this hadith is not mutawatir. Mutawatir ahadith, mass transmitted ahadith, are ones in which it's clear cut simply by looking at the amount of narrators. Simply by looking, you would know that this hadith is mutawatir. However, all muhaddithin agree that every mutawatir hadith is at least mashhur. So every mutawatir hadith is mashhur. However, not every mashhur hadith is mutawatir. So this is the significance of understanding these four terms: gharib, aziz, mashhur, and mutawatir. They are very important terms. Something that is mutawatir is different than something that is not mutawatir. So I'm going to draw another table here. So you have all ahadith. Something that is mutawatir is mass transmitted. And then you have another category called ahad, or we also call it khabar al-wahid, which means the narration of one person. So ahad can be gharib, it can be aziz, and it can be mashhur. All of these three are called ahad. Anything else is called mutawatir. Another difference is that a mutawatir hadith, you do not look into the narrators. If you have 70 narrators, you do not look into whether they are reliable or not. Why is this? While it is true that some people are liars, some narrators are liars, some narrators fabricate a hadith because for their own personal gain, for the gain of their innovative sect, etc., etc. We know that fabricators exist. However, if you have 70 different people, most of the time in different cities, of different backgrounds, it is impossible for all of them to be fabricating something for the same reason. First of all, know that back then there's no social media. It wasn't as if they're all in this Facebook Messenger group and they're all agreeing to, spread this one lie. It's very according to the behavior of humans and the logical behavior of society and people. We know that it is not possible for this amount of people to all agree on the same lie. So we do not look into their reliability. Similarly, we do not look into their memories. It's possible for two people to coincidentally make the same mistake due to a lapse in their memory. It's not possible for 70 people to all make the same mistake because of something wrong with their memory. They can't, for example, there's a hadith with the number 3 in it. They can't all make the same mistake and accidentally say that it is 2 instead of 3. So when a hadith is mutawatir, we do not even look into the asanid. We do not look into the chains of narration. So the entire science of the chain of narration, it only happens here in the hadith that are called ahad. We look into the chain of narration because their attribution is not known by necessity, whereas a mutawatir is known by necessity. So that's something also very important to know about mashhur, aziz, and gharib, is that we look into their chains of narration, whereas mutawatir, we do not look into it. A final bit of information to know about this before we continue is that the Hanafis have different definitions of these words. The Hanafis do not only look into the chain of narration, they also look to whether or not the narrators are acting upon these narrations. So again, we said that the books of mustalah, the books of hadith terminology are very Shafi'i biased. In this specific issue, mutawatir and non-mutawatir, then all of these schools agree, the Ahl al-Hadith, the Malikis, the Shafi'is, and the Hanabila, and the other extinct schools such as the Thawris, they all agree on this definition. The Hanafis, they have their own hadith terminology. So the word mashhur and mutawatir in the Hanafi school means something else. Inshallah, one day we can read a Mustalah al-Hadith specific to the Hanafi school and we can study the differences. Like that's all we're going to mention for Asanid for right now in this context. Let me clear the drawings. Like the last type of hadith, or actually we can mention another two. معنعن كعن سعيد عن كرم ومبهم ما فيه راو لم يسم. We have two types of hadith here. The first one is mu'an'an. Mu'an'an is one in which the narrator is using an. So if I'm narrating, I say an shaykhi, from my shaykh. It is different from me saying حدثني شيخي or قال لي شيخي or سمعت شيخي, which is I heard my shaykh or my shaykh told me or my shaykh spoke to me. It's different from just me saying from my shaykh. What's the difference? When I say حدثني شيخي, it's clearly understood that the shaykh actually spoke to me directly. There was no intermediary. Whereas if I say from my shaykh, عن شيخي, it's possible he spoke to me directly. It's also possible there is someone in between, and I'm just cutting him out to shorten the chain. So the word an, when I say an Sa'id, an Karam, it doesn't necessitate that I heard from Sa'id or I heard from Karam. So that's why there is a difference between haddathani and an. So a hadith mu'an'an, a mu'an'an hadith is one in which you find the word an and in and other synonyms in the hadith. This is important to know because the fuqaha, the specific fuqaha who care about the connectedness of the chains. If they see a hadith that is mu'an'an, then they might want to investigate whether this person actually heard. Now we're going to get into something called mudallas. It was a not uncommon practice during the times of hadith narration for someone to hide their shaykh. For example, I narrate from my shaykh who narrates from his shaykh. It was not uncommon for me to purposely remove him and say an, and I mentioned the farther away shaykh. So, this is me, and this is my shaykh. I'm just going to put a plus sign, and then I'm going to put and then his shaykh. It wasn't uncommon for me to purposely remove him and say an, and then mention the shaykh before him. This could happen for many, many reasons, and the reasons aren't important for our context. Sometimes their shaykh could be, he could have a bad reputation. He could be a weak narrator, and I want to strengthen my hadith. I don't want my hadith to be taken as weak. So I want to strengthen my hadith and I want to cut him out. And so instead of lying and saying I'm just going to call him O because it's an O. Instead of lying and saying O spoke to me, I just say from O. So I'm not technically lying. I'm doing something called tadlis, which is to hide. Now the default of a mu'an'an hadith, the default, if someone narrates an Sa'id, the default is that we take him to have actually heard. We don't assume someone is doing tadlis. And many people such as Ibn Abdul Barr and others, they narrate the consensus of the muhaddithin that the default is this. The default is that if someone narrates an, we automatically assume that it is haddathani or qal. We automatically assume that he actually heard until proven otherwise. So this is called tadlis. We assume all narrators are innocent of tadlis until we have evidence that they did do tadlis. ومبهم ما فيه راو لم يسم. A mubham hadith. A mubham hadith is a hadith in which there is a narrator who is not named. For example, I say, a man spoke to me and he heard from Sheikh Ahmed. Who is this man? I didn't say who he was. I just said a man spoke to me, or I heard a man speaking. This is called mubham. It means hidden, because the narrator is hidden. His identity is unknown. This is different from a narrator whose name is known, but his reliability is unknown. No, in this, I don't even know what his name is. I'm just saying a man spoke to me. I heard a dude say, imagine I tell you, some guy spoke to me and he said, Sheikh Ahmed told me. How are you going to believe him? Who is this man? How do I know if this man is truthful? Is he reliable or not? So this is called mubham. ما فيه راو لم يسم. It contains a person who has not been named. وكل ما قلت رجاله على وضده ذلك الذي قد نزل. Those whose men are few are raised or uplifted على وضده ذلك الذي قد نزل. The opposite, something that نزل, it goes down, is one that has more people. So when I say I have a high sanad, sanadi aliya or asanidi aliya, my sanads are high, it means that my chains of narration contain very few people. Whereas if my chains of narration are going down, asanidi nazalat, that means that my chain of narration contains more people. So if I'm narrating from Imam Bukhari with 18 people, whereas my colleague is narrating from Imam Bukhari with 20 people, 18 is less than 20. And so because 18 is less, I can say that my chain of narration is higher than that of my friend. And his chain is lower than that of mine. وما أضفته إلى الأصحاب من قول وفعل فهو موقوف زك. Last class, we discussed مرفوع, موقوف, and مقطوع. And we said last time that موقوف comes out of order. مرفوع and مقطوع are beside each other here in line 7. And we mentioned the definition of موقوف, and we said that we're going to not go into it when it comes up because we already went into it last time. And so here it is, it comes up later, it comes up out of order because the author wants to keep the rhythm of the poem. And that's where we're going to stop today. Next time we're gonna continue with Mursal, line 16. Play it. There's only 2 minutes for questions before the Zoom ends. Anyone has any questions? Can you repeat what you said about connected hadith? Okay. A connected hadith, according to the author, is a hadith in which all the narrators are connected, all of them are hearing from one another, and there's nobody omitted from the chain. Every single person is named. There's no tabi'i that's skipped. The sahabi is not skipped. Every single person is in the chain, and that is called a connected chain. Now, according to the author, a connected chain must end at the Prophet ﷺ. In other words, it must be marfu'. This is according to the author. According to almost everyone else, it doesn't matter whether it's marfu', whether it ends at the Prophet ﷺ or it ends at a sahabi. Any chain of narration that is connected is called a connected chain, regardless of who it ends at and who the final say is attributed to. So it doesn't matter if it's marfu', mawquf, maqtu', it doesn't matter if it's a saying of a sahabi, a saying of a tabi'i, as long as the chain is connected with every single person is mentioned from the beginning to the end, that is called a connected chain according to the vast majority of muhaddithin, as opposed to the author of the Bayquniyya. Okay. Somebody's asking me stuff about the Hanafis. I can't give a detailed answer in a minute. If you want to ask in the group chat, you are more than welcome to. That is all we have time for today. وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.